All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back for another awesome episode. I'm so pumped to bring you the guest today. We got Andrew Coates in the house. He is an in-person and online trainer for the everyday person. He is a writer for a couple of small publications like Men's Health, T Nation, Muscle and Fitness, On It, True Coach, and Generation Iron. He's been a speaker that I've personally seen at Raise the Bar, Vigor Ground, Strong New York, and plenty others. Leader of coaches and an ambassador for our space as far as how to do it the right way. And fun fact, if you guys follow him after this and message him, he will guaranteed leave you a voice note. So, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Brian, my friend, thank you. I appreciate you because you show up to everything. If more coaches in the industry were kind of like you, they would they would stay in the industry. They would have great careers. And I appreciate you having me. It's great to be back.
Appreciate that. Of course, I'm so happy to have you on because you're one of the guys that I'm like, I want to make sure that this podcast is like good. It's like big enough where enough people are going to hear it because I want to make sure that enough people hear your message.
All right, let's have some fun. What do you got for me?
All right. So, well, first off, I'd like to start off where you started because I know you come from a unique background where it's like you were in like casinos and bars before actually jumping into personal training, correct?
Yep.
Yep. So that transition when it comes to that like nightlife style, then I think a lot of people do struggle with when it comes to alcohol and like other things that like what was that like going from that life to like, okay, now we're jumping into the personal training side of things?
I think the the fitness industry and fitness enthusiasts, there's a healthy subsection that came out of that world that lived in kind of the party lifestyle, like nightlife world. And sometimes there's like overlap where you kind of like try to have one foot in each world. It's kind of hard to do, especially if you're really hard into the late night scene. And at a certain point, I think it's a gateway out. And there are people in the industry, and you put up messaging about being obsessed about fitness, and there are always going to be screeching harpies. No, 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 it's bad. It's like,
Yeah.
guess what? Humans have addictive traits sometimes. And if it's a bit of a false dichotomy, because yes, we know that, fitness obsession can be taken to a point where it becomes very maladaptive. We deal with eating disorders and a lot of other dysfunctional shit. And it's not to say that that isn't real, but we have a society that is overwhelmingly metabolically unhealthy. I think the statistics that I pulled out of a study somewhere maybe a year ago was about 85% of, I guess adults in the US are metabolically unhealthy. And I don't remember exactly how they define that, but let's even say that that is an aggressive definition. The statistics are very high. And it's not to say that, no, I want to shift people to the opposite end of the spectrum where they're so obsessed that they're developing eating disorders. That's an absurd false dichotomy. So we're not dealing in that. But when people, and sometimes it's ideological talking heads in our industry who've kind of entered our world, and they demonize aspects of fitness or the fitness industry, and then they present this narrative that, ooh, just because you're leaner doesn't mean you're metabolically healthy. Objectively speaking, that's true. We know that's true, but it sort of is presented as this false dichotomy that there are often no or minimal dangers to having high levels of body fat and being relatively inactive as far as long-term metabolic health risk and certain other bad outcomes like increased risk of cancer, whatever. And that sort of ideas is complete nonsense. So I don't like the false dichotomy that's presented. It's like, hey, ooh, don't get obsessed with, getting too lean because eating disorders. Okay. Eating disorders are
Yeah.
real. Eating disorders are a problem. But guess what? Most people don't go from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other.
Yeah. And most
Now,
people need that talk where it's like, let's cross that bridge when we get there.
and there is a bit of that too. Let's get you out of
Yeah.
this one really, really dangerous territory and not have fear mongering about this, like this sand trap down at the other end of this, right?
Yeah.
But I think we have to be honest about the fact that there are people who have addictive natures to their personality, whether addicted to video games or gambling, which is really maladaptive. I mean, I've seen that. I've never been vulnerable to that side of things. But hey, I remember I played World of Warcraft for a long time. And, by that metric, I was very addicted to World of Warcraft. But also, World of
As
Warcraft
someone who's
allowed,
just getting into Diablo, I totally get it because
right.
I've been on a
So,
tear.
yeah. And so I personally know that I have to have a boundary around like, multiplayer online games because, yeah, I got pulled into that world. Now, here's the thing, the context is I left the late night party scene of owning a nightclub and I moved across the country. And guess what? I immersed myself in a world where I was online, but I actually had an incredible community of wonderful people that I would interact with all the time. And it actually got me out of a much more maladaptive, place in life in my like mid 20s into this. And then I started getting back in the gym because I'd been really devoted to the gym in my like early mid 20s for a while. And then then there was conflict between like living in the bar scene and owning a bar. And then the gym side of things lost for a little while. And then eventually, all right, I left owning that nightclub. Like we were just staying there after hours, Martini nightclub, St. John's, Newfoundland, 20 years ago, a long, long time ago. And those two things didn't coexist very well. So left that world behind, moved across the country, kind of a fresh start to life, better opportunity out here in Edmonton, Alberta. And then it became immersion in World of Warcraft, which was a lot better than the alternative. And it was a stepping stone and a thing to kind of heal from that bad place that, I came out of. That got me back into, something I love, which was fitness. And it was part of the transition. So we could, it's these things aren't necessarily black and white. So if we can channel, if we do know that there's some sort of addictive element or obsessive element of our personality, then I would rather channel that into fitness and nutrition. And then as it turned into a career in fitness, I would work out at this gym all the time. And I got to, interact with a couple of the trainer staff. And then they kept asking me to come work there because they thought I'd make a good trainer. I kept saying no until I finally said yes. It was 14 years ago this happened. And at first I felt overwhelmed, got a foothold, got busy early, just realized, hey, I really like this. This is great. Double down on it. Got into evidence-based resources. I started reading T Nation and soon enough got into precision nutrition's articles and eventually did their course and various other figures. I got into Lane Norton stuff early, his podcast, Physique Science Radio, with his then assistant and co-host Sohee Lee, who has gone on to be, this huge figure in the industry. It was great to see her again. It's been years. She's a friend. We both spoke at Luca's, so, we got some time. But these are foundational figures in my earliest education and soaking up these resources. And then I eventually came across like a Dr. Mike Isertel and Renaissance Periodization. And now I'm really close with the RP team. They're incredible. And
And
along the way,
everybody listening, real quick, be ready to take notes because Andrew's going to drop a lot of really good accounts and books for sure. So just be ready.
maybe, maybe
Sorry to cut you off. I just want to let the people get ready.
fair. And I went down the rabbit hole of evidence-based exercise science, training, and nutrition. And I got exposed to more and more of these great people. I would listen to podcasts like this and find people, whether it's, my pal Pete Dupuis, who is Eric Cressy's business partner. He's the sales and marketing guy, the business guy behind the strength and conditioning for Cressy Sports Performance, which is a fairly legendary strength and performance gym in the East Coast.
Oh, yeah.
And there's countless examples somewhere along the way, whether it's T Nation or social media or podcast, I found and was exposed to all of these great authorities and professionals. Like I've been reading Tony Jedlicor and Ben Bruno on T Nation for a very long time. They're amazing. The list goes on and on, right? I could go at this shit all day. And maybe it was a bit of that, all in personality that dove hard into training. Is why I became extremely busy as a trainer, rapidly accumulated experience, fell in love with this, kept learning, deeper education. And then after 6 years at a commercial gym, left, went on my own contract that I've still contract at a gym that a friend of mine owns. That company's been growing. We now host a conference together the last 2 years and one in 2019. And then wanting to write for a website, which turned into getting some attention from some of the people who we were heavily involved in writing in the industry. That led to an invitation to write for T Nation, which is the first of all the big ones. And then just to continue to seek out or put myself in a position where people were noticing, and then inviting me to these great opportunities. That's how the public speaking happened. And the podcast. So I started a podcast with my friend Dean Guido over 7 years ago. And that was a great vehicle just to get to know and connect with more people in the industry. And that grew and did well and deepened relationships. And then traveling to these events opened a lot of these doors. I was at an event this weekend and talking to someone who is, has a very, well-known writing publication. And, unless I won't say anything until like something there's official, but we got talking about the possibility. So if all works out, I may end up with a new writing credit, right? Sometimes those things fall through, sometimes they materialize. But I think it's that relentless drive and ferociousness, and quite frankly, obsession with education and just loving the career I have that has been directed into a really positive place. And it's a long-winded way of saying, because that's a career stuff. And for the enthusiast, if you have people in your world who are saying, things that are deterring you from spending more time at the gym, or they're questioning it, and they're painting it as if you have some sort of unhealthy obsession. Well, I mean, I think you would need to have a good, honest conversation with you. Is like, is this stuff maladaptive to relationship and life? Is it crossing that line? My guess is probably, in most cases, probably not. It probably has more to do with the fact that someone else's value system is different than yours. And if you ever think about it, do you have people in your world who are uncomfortable with their own body image, mental health, metabolic health, pathway they're on, energy level, and they can often get really uncomfortable if there's someone around them in their world, coworkers, bad for this stuff, right? Family members, tricky. And you have this constant reminder of the thing that you're not doing and this low grade discomfort with your own efforts. And oftentimes it's much easier to try to discourage or even sabotage, whether willfully or subconsciously, the person who's this reminder of this thing you don't like about yourself, than to look inward and say, wait a minute, there's something about me I have to change. And I always call the office donuts. You get someone who, we've all had this experience where, you decided, I'm going to, eat healthier. I'm going to start working out more. And of course, that's something that comes up at work. And all of a sudden, there's that one person, and then they start bringing in, there's more pizza, there's more donuts. I call them sabotage donuts. And as a metaphor, just be alert to this behavior, because, and then you'll hear things like, oh, live a little, right? Live a little. Oh, come out for drinks after, whatever. And sometimes you are presented with a choice between, do I want to have a couple of donuts, or do I want to stay on my diet? And quite frankly, with anyone that I'm talking to here, anyone I coach, if a really great Krispy Kreme donut, I'm Canadian, so I think we now have those up here. Maybe, I'm not sure. Tim Hortons donuts, and Tim Hortons coffee is garbage. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to
I
pretend
was
like
gonna
it.
say you guys love shitting on Tim Hortons. I don't know
It's
why.
it is
I've never
trash. I'm
been.
sorry. Garbage. But I French press my own coffee. I have one right here. So anyway, that's side quest right there. Let me bring back on track. But if your idea of a great treat that you don't want to give up is having a donut once in a while, fucking enjoy the donut. I would rather you have a boundary and do it on your terms. I've talked about this a lot. If anybody's listened before, I've got an article on this. I apologize for repeating, but for me, my treat that I have a firm boundary around is I enjoy a medium Dairy Queen Blizzard, usually on Saturdays after a leg day. It's kind of a thing that I leave leg day. I have lots of time there. I will go through drive through, I'll pick it up, and I will sit in my vehicle quietly. I'll tune the world out, and I will just slowly enjoy. So I'm slowly and mindfully eating this treat. And because that is far better than all of the other mediocre high calorie crap that exists around us all the time, that we eat out of poor planning, poor boundaries, impulse, convenience. And that stuff is not fulfilling. We feel guilty about it. We feel emotionally and physically about it. And then guess what? We still want the things that we really love, right? The things that we truly treasure. So I just want people to get clear on the difference between the mediocre rubbish that we're beholden to because we're not planning ahead and we have poor boundaries around it, and getting really clear on the things that, like, no, this is non-negotiable. I want to savor this. We can build that into a sensible plan, no matter what your goals are: fat loss, muscle building, maintenance, etc. Just healthy life. And there's room for the treats within reason. You can't have everything. We're adults. We have to, like, triage what matters versus what doesn't. There are lots of things that I really like a lot that I've rarely eaten. I had a small bag of ketchup chips that was left over for Halloween, right? That was good. It was great. I really like ketchup chips. That was the first bag of ketchup chips I had in over a year, and I can do without them, even though I actually enjoy them. So for me, that's negotiable. But the DQ Blizzard, that one is kind of special. And because I know I get to look forward to it, I don't crave the other things. I don't need the other things. If I get a craving, I can go, hey, listen, I get something. I'm not restricted. I actually get to look forward to this thing. And the fact that we don't feel restricted means that we're less likely to just like go all in and then be like fuck it mode. And then next thing you know, you look
Because you'll
around,
never
it's like
get it again.
it's wrappers everywhere, and you wake up from a sugar coma, right? And that's happened, right? To
Yep.
everybody in life. We know that, right? Oh, I've blown it, like
Oh
slash your
yeah.
tires metaphor. And then I enjoy the blizzard guilt-free, shame-free. Because if you go and you eat crap all week long and you feel terrible, you feel bad about it, you feel guilty, you feel shame about it. And I don't want people to feel that way, but let's be honest, that's what happens. But then you still want the fulfilling thing. You still want the thing you really treasure. But then you go do that, and now you still feel guilty and you feel shame for having that too. And it gets piled in. So it ruins the experience of the good stuff. So if we actually can really aggressively, I mean, mercilessly cut out the crap that we don't savor, and we're doing it out of just sheer convenience or poor planning or whatever the hell, then we can actually preserve the experience of enjoying the things that we love and do it without shame and without guilt. And people forget about this sort of thing. So this is something I think this mindset can really clean up nutrition as a whole.
Absolutely. And I think it's a lost skill of actually truly enjoying your food because we do so many things all the time around food instead of just sitting and being there and being at the dinner table or in the car and just being like, I'm going to take a minute.
Yeah. And this can also, I mean, I'm kind of driving the bus here now, but alcohol is a contentious thing,
Drive away.
right? And so we have more people in our industry. It's fire and brimstone. It's like no amount of alcohol is healthy, right? And it's like, okay, we now have research on that, right? We now understand
Yep.
that no amount of alcohol is healthy, okay? And yes, large amounts of alcohol like drop off a cliff in terms of negative health effects versus like modest amounts. And traditionally, there was this belief that a moderate amount of alcohol had health benefits. That was a long-standing belief, and there was research to support this stuff. But what wasn't taken into account was what are the confounding factors. And now, as I understand it, the general belief is that what was clouding that data before is a lot of the people who were consuming, moderate amounts of alcohol, what they were doing is they were doing it in social settings, right? So we also now know, I mean, this is a bit of hyperbole, but I think this holds up that loneliness, right? Like forced isolation, people who don't feel like they have any connections to the world, not people who choose solitude when they want to, but people who truly do not feel like they have any real friends. They may not have a relationship, and they feel genuinely lonely and disconnected from people. That is as unhealthy for you, metabolically unhealthy, and I think it like has similar effects on shortening lifespan as smoking does. And it sounds outrageous, and yet that's what the evidence points to. So what do we see positive health benefits from? Being in social environments with friends. And we've all done this thing where we sat around and had a dinner with like the closest people in your world and it was incredible, or a date night out, and maybe you enjoyed a glass of wine, or maybe you had a couple of beers with friends, right? Maybe it's like a couple of beers at a sporting event. And it's the people who are like, having a couple of drinks versus the people who are like putting away a case of 12 beers every time. Moderate drinking, right? And
Yeah.
so what was end up happening was the positive effects of being in social environments with people, which can sometimes include alcohol. Now, of course, the people on the other side are like, "Oh, you don't need to drink." Well, I agree, but it's not that simple, right? It's not that simple. And so the social benefits of a little bit of drinking outweighed the deleterious effects of the alcohol itself. And at the end of the day, we also have to look at this from a reality. There are going to be some people who are going to say, my relationship with alcohol is a problem. I can't do it with moderation. I can't do it, just a couple of drinks in a setting like this. And just can't drink alcohol. B, I can't be around people who are drinking or be environments where there's alcohol. And someone has to get very clear on that stuff and be ready for that conversation if that's where they are, if they have a problem with alcohol. But for the other person who, if it's like, getting people to stop drinking coffee. And overwhelmingly, I think coffee, like just if you enjoy black coffee, I prefer black coffee. If you like it and you have a couple of cups a day, it's reasonable. That actually, as I understand the evidence, that's net slightly health beneficial. There's no like real health risks of having a couple of cups of coffee a
Yeah.
day. Not that
I'm
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 aware.
pretty sure some cocoa beans in your life are actually a benefit. I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So you get these people saying, "Oh, you need to." It's sometimes people just get on with the rhetoric. "Oh, give up caffeine, give up coffee, whatever." And if that takes away a little bit of joy in your day, even if there were some sort of like health positive, it probably actually is going to be a net negative for you. So it's not about like taking every item in your life and going, all right, well, is slightly bad. We've got to eliminate this. This is good. We got to do more of this. Sometimes these things come together. And if and I'm not saying, hey, everybody should go drink more and be more social. You're missing my point. It's if you have a healthy relationship with alcohol, you have good boundaries around it, you're not excessively drinking, and you get out into social situations and you would like to enjoy a glass of wine or a couple of beers or something like that. And it's, sometimes, but it gets you out into environments where you're around people that bring you joy and you feel good doing things you enjoy. It is probably a net positive, especially if you're not consuming that much overall alcohol. And I've got no problem with that. And again, I have little tolerance for the screeching harpies that it's like fire and brimstone. No, there's no room, no amount of alcohol. You should never do it. And do you really want that kind of messaging in your world? Right. Even the smartest people. I got a buddy, he's local here in Edmonton. His name is Anthony Zorzetto. And his account is a lot about getting guys sober. But his messaging is empathetic, it's charismatic. It's from his own personal place where he's been in bad places in his life to where he's now been sober for years. He's got a great family life and a successful business. But he's there to mentor men who have a problem relationship with alcohol to the point where he wants to create a bridge to help them get sober, have purpose, and improve their lives. He's big into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so getting involved in that. And so again,
Yeah.
every guy that I know who's in jiu-jitsu is literally super obsessed with jiu-jitsu. Okay. And so
Always.
is that maladaptive? Probably not. I mean, I'm sure they get hurt a little bit. One of my buddies he had compartment syndrome in his leg and didn't realize it right away. And like had to go to the hospital. He had like a double fasciotomy on the sides of his calf. But it's a freak accident. Okay, so, stuff
Yeah.
happens. And like
And
I'm
to bring
messaging
it
you.
back
Yeah,
to like Eric Cressy, for example, he had a great quote. It's like the orthopedist beats the cardiac surgeon every day of the week.
absolutely. Right. And if that is the ultimate trade-off between the behaviors, guess what? Like I will take and I hope it doesn't come down to this, but I've got a lot of friends who've had like knee or hip replacements who've been like infants. Lee Boyce has had, if I'm not mistaken, double knee replacement, right?
Oh
Double
wow.
major, yeah, and you wouldn't even know it, right? He's got
He moves pretty good for a guy that has a double knee replacement.
moves great. I know he's had basically double knee surgery, and I'm pretty sure they were replacements. Correct me if I'm wrong here on this one, but anyway, you wouldn't even know it, right? And strong as hell. And I don't think that was, again, he's got an athletic background, and I don't know the circumstance behind it. I don't know if there was something degenerative there or whatever to have that bilaterally, or if it's just major injuries. But, I would take that and the recovery from it, from actually like having a massive heart attack that might straight up kill you, right? So, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
kind of hoping that we can avoid both outcomes, but I agree with the analogy.
Exactly. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, because a lot of people do create this dichotomy that doesn't really need to exist.
Mm.
And I think it does stem from a lot of the social media stuff because people want clicks, they want views and things like that. And this is a topic I wanted to go deep on with you because not only the fact that like you've been in the game, you've done a lot of great things on social media, but you know some of these people that like do this stuff. So it's like if somebody listening right now wanted to curate their feed to like be to put it in a position where they learn really good stuff, what would your tip to them be?
I mean, I think be careful about what you click on. Be careful about sensationalism because all of the social media feeds now are going in the direction of an interest-based algorithm. If you notice your Facebook, if you're on X, if you're on Instagram, if you're on TikTok, and it all originates from TikTok, you can call it the TikTokification of social
Yep.
media. And Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Day Trading Attention, if you're really interested, we'll explain it all. Okay, it's really good. But TikTok changed the game. So what ended up happening was TikTok just got really good at feeding people, understanding, analyzing what people interacted with, and feeding them more of it, which kept them on the algorithm, kept them on the app longer, which is the goal of all these apps. So if you think about it, traditionally you would be shown mostly what you follow. But let's say you've been on Facebook. How long have you had a Facebook account, Brian?
I was one of the originals, like when it made public instead of just the edu. So
So we're
maybe
talking,
20, 2008
are
ish,
you interested
2009.
in the same shit you were back in, what is it? Almost it's 16 years ago,
I mean,
right?
I still jam to the song that was on my MySpace page, but other than that, no.
Exactly, right? We change, we grow up, right? If someone who's going from their teens into their late 30s, or in my case, I mean, I was a late adopter. I was probably 30-ish, early 30s, 30-ish when I jumped on Facebook, and I'm 46 now, right? So that there's been a lot of changes in my interests in my life, and yet the people we are friends with and what they're posting and the pages that we liked and accounts we interacted with, even like something in Instagram, changes over like 3 to 7 years or what have you, things change. So if it keeps showing you the things that you used to follow, and you're not unfollowing these things, but you're interacting with on the explore feed or everything else, or sending memes to different people, that the algorithms are better at knowing what you want to see than what you are, right? Because it will just keep showing it to you. So be careful what you interact with, because the more sensational bullshit, even if it's stuff you disagree with, if you're like sending these memes, look at this stupid thing, send it to a friend, guess what? That's a signal to the algorithm. Hey, show him more of that, right? Show her more of that.
Like when you
So
comment on something you actually hate, it's one of the worst things you can do for your feed.
yeah, like if you're and like one of the things I said off air is we'll stay off politics, but I'll give an example. If you're one of these people that is wired to, be outraged about everything on social media, and you see something that you disagree with and you comment on it in some sort of outrage, guess what? The algorithm is going to feed you more of it, and it's going to feed you more outrage. And obviously, people have strong reactions to things they're outraged by, and all of a sudden you're wondering like, why am I seeing all this particular side of the ideological spectrum stuff all the time? It's because you're commenting on it because you're mad about it. So, and I'm a big believer you have to guard your emotional well-being, because everybody wants your attention, everybody wants your outrage, everybody wants your clicks. And if they can get you outraged or emotional about something, especially either if you're what they're saying emboldens you against something they're railing against, or if what you're seeing makes you mad about what you're seeing, either way, they've got you and you're mad. And it hijacks your limbic system, it hijacks your emotions, and it takes you off mission. It takes you out of your peace and calm in your everyday life. And if you then take that disruption of your peace into your interactions in your workplace with your family, and just even like the fact that it has your fight or flight system, your sympathetic nervous system, like ramped up as you interact today, you can kind of feel it in your bones, or you can feel it through your nerves. And that's not a good place to be. Okay. And then all of a sudden you're turning around and you're like amping it up with like a lot of coffee. Okay, fine. Or if you're like suppressing it with things like alcohol, which we talked about earlier, I just think that we can put too much stress from the world in our system emotionally, and we don't realize how disruptive it is to our well-being. It hijacks us off our mission to do the fulfilling career, if you're an entrepreneur building something, or your interaction with your family or the people in your world, right? How many people do you know who started out pretty like normal, and now they've been completely hijacked by the extremist ideological whatever on one side or the other? And that's just all they post on social media. That's all they think about. That's all they talk about. Do you really enjoy being around those kind of people, right? And it's a slippery slope, but something just they just got fed outrage nonstop. We also get the same thing in, fitness and nutrition. There are these echo chambers of belief and ideology within strength and physical therapy, within nutrition. Nutrition is especially bad. People behave, it's a very religious, like tribal like
Brutal.
thing. So back to your original point is just be careful about this stuff. If you find that this is the stuff you're clicking on all the time, you actually have to disrupt that pattern. You have to make a conscientious choice and be like, I don't want to see this. And Instagram in particular has a little thing where it's like, I'm not interested. So you can literally say, I'm not interested. And you've got to keep feeding it that, because if you keep clicking on it, even though you're not interested, it will keep giving it to you. And then find people who share great information, that are savvy about being entertaining and keeping your attention, but who aren't necessarily like dealing in total outrage. And I think it's one of the reasons why someone like a Jordan Syed has been so popular for so long. Jordan does not deal in outrage. Sometimes he'll grab onto some sort of like trending topic, but he usually treats it with thoughtfulness and nuance, and he's got a huge following. There are so many of our other friends and peers in the industry who are really good about this stuff. I find, again, Dr. Mike Israetel is really good about, RP, they're clever. Like they'll have him critique, some celebrities workout, right?
Yeah,
And
but it's not
kind of
like
make,
he's going after them and saying, this is horrible, this is that. He actually provides, like, this is why I feel the way that I feel based on what they're doing.
and he's funny, right? And he's
Yeah.
naturally quite humorous. So if you can find that what you're exposing yourself to is educational, entertaining, uplifting, positive, as opposed to leaving your nervous system feeling fried because you're in a state of outrage. Like my best friend, I put this in a presentation about social media. My best friend, her love language is she'll send me cat memes, right? So she's like dosing me with a little bit of positive every day. And she's not the sort of person who will like spell out in words. Speaking of cats, Oz, come here. Come here. So here's Ozzy.
The
So
famous Oz.
there he is. So she won't like spell out, hey, I was thinking about you today. But her way of doing that is like, I'll look down and there's like a cat meme and it's either funny or sweet or whatever. And it's her way of saying, hey, you were on my mind. I saw this. I thought of you. Okay. And that is always, that's one of those little positive, uplifting little pieces of my day. And if you're watching cat videos, if like you're upset about social media, just search for cats or owls. Like I love owls. I have an ex-girlfriend who hates owls. I'm like, how can you hate owls? I love owls. Or if you see like an
Such a
entire,
weird thing to take a stance on.
yeah, like what? Really? They're cute, right? They're like they look like cat birds, really. They kind of look like
Yeah.
feathered cats. Oz, you want to get down, huh? Or maybe you like but the camera. Or maybe you like watching videos on like how smart crows are. That's super cool. Go search for that kind of stuff. Find some sort of like maybe it's like capybaras, these big, happy looking mammals. God, that like just hang out at the edge of water next to crocodiles and nobody bothers them, right? Or whatever cute, furry or fluffy or scaled thing that you like. And if that brings you a little bit of joy, great. Or go watch videos of what is it? Will it blend? Right? Go put that stuff in your algorithm.
Or is it cake?
Throwing like glow sticks or like cell phones or God only knows what else, marbles into a blend tech blender. That's kind of famous.
You know what's oddly satisfying are those squishing ones, the ones that have like that big
Yeah,
metal thing that press down. You're like, I wonder how this is going to end.
right. Like that stuff is way better for your nervous system than watching outrage about the thing that makes you mad about the universe or nutrition, right? You know, if
Yeah.
you got someone who's like walking through a grocery store aisle and they're just like spitting flames about breakfast cereal, it's like, okay, is that helping you? First of all, the people here's a foolproof way to know if you're dealing with a charlatan. They're walking through a grocery store aisle demonizing something. No matter how much you might agree with the fact that, okay, whatever, like sugar, I think there's one Muppet. No qualification. The guy literally put up a video about like bragging about the fact that like dietitians and PhDs in
I know who
nutrition.
you're talking about. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
my
Were
name's Syed or something. I
I can't
forget
remember what
his
his name was.
tag. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like bragging about the fact that these dietitians, people with education, were criticizing him. It's like my greatest critics are all this, and he was like bragging about the fact he has no education. It's like you kind of prove the point, like you're a moron. But and here I am, kind of like sort of like being animated about it. But this guy would go, and I've seen a few of his videos, and people will share them on my feed. I'm like, oh my God, okay, fine, whatever. But he's going and he's picking like donuts or ice cream or whatever, and he's demon like nobody thinks that these things are health food. No one is actually making that mistake. Go back to our conversation earlier about picking out things that you treasure and enjoying them. Like one of these days he's going to have like a DQ Blizzard, like a Reese peanut butter cup one. And then I'm going to go full send on this motherfucker. Like I will. That's it. I'm going to go nuclear.
Just
Like no,
waiting.
you leave that the fuck alone, right? I will have some words with you, and I'm being playful, but I mean, it's you missed the point, but people buy into this crap and then they share it because, like, yeah, 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 big food agriculture bad. There are probably some serious flaws to the way that system works, but
Oh,
there's so much misinformation, misunderstanding about the nature of what's going into these foods. And there's going to be people listening and be like, oh no, we need to eat more natural stuff. I mean, sort of. I think if we can, as a society, get more people to eat more fruit and vegetables, more lean meats, consume less processed food, and ultimately re reduce the calorie intake to where you're in like maintenance calories, you're eating as much as you're burning off and you're more active. Guess what? That's a great outcome. I love it. But to just turn around and say to people who don't have a lot of education, don't necessarily have access, they don't even know where to start, and to say, stop eating this thing, right? Stop eating like this bag of chips. And meanwhile, these assholes are actually selling something on their website that is similar but different and doesn't contain a seed oil. And like people go lose their minds over seed oils. They lose their fucking minds. right? And it doesn't
Which
matter how
I can't
times,
understand because anybody who does their research can't find a single study that say that they're inflammatory.
yeah, you can get Lane
I
Norton,
don't get
Dr.
it.
Joey Munoz. They're great for debunking this kind of crap, but it's the emotional appeal. And part of the problem is you're trying to make a rational argument to people who are reacting emotionally to, okay, we have an obese and unhealthy population, metabolically unhealthy population. So it's very easy for people to demonize this one thing, right? And they've been shifting what the thing they've been demonizing is for probably the last 30 or 40 years. And seed oils is now one of the demonic things that everybody is whining about. And it's low-hanging fruit. I'm
Hmm.
not even interested in fighting that battle. But guess what? That's not the thing that's made everybody obese and unhealthy.
And I think that's another red flag
Much
too.
of
If
it's
you see
food.
somebody jumping ship over and over again, like, no, it's this thing that's the problem, it's that thing that's the problem, that's also a gigantic red flag because like something went out of style or they got debunked and now it's on to the next thing.
Yep. And watch for the growth and the creeping of more and more extreme narratives. So I like to highlight, okay, so for probably well over a decade now, keto has been this like big thing, right? It's like low carb, right? Keto is really just repackaged low carb, and low carb has been around for 30 plus years. Okay. And then what do we get? Well, we have carnivore dieting. So we got low carb. So how can we get more extreme? Let's actually cut out all fruits and veggies. Let's cut out all carbs altogether, and let's just go straight carnivore, right? Like, fats in there, whatever. And I mean, I am of the understanding based on the medical literature that the long-term implications of carnivore dieting is probably really abhorrent for your blood lipids, a
It,
whole bunch of other stuff.
it's
Go
one of
follow.
the only like truly dangerous diets if we go really far in one direction, like doing it poorly.
Yep. And if you really want some good information on this sort of stuff, I would say Dr. Spencer Nadolsky. He's a really great resource on kind of sifting through this stuff. I find Spencer's really nuanced. But I've actually had people in my world and even clients who are dabbling in carnivore dieting, and I didn't turn around and be like, oh, this is the fucking stupidest thing ever. It's more about empathizing with what's going on. And I'm going to explain why carnivore dieting often is appealing to people, outside of the fact it's just more extreme. For some people, they just want extreme shit. But let's go a different way.
Yeah.
You get people who are just feel like crap and they eat fruits and veggies and a variety of other stuff and lots of processed stuff and they feel like crap. They just feel awful. And maybe they just haven't figured out that like there's some FODMAP food stuff in there. Like there's a whole spectrum of foods that can actually cause gastrointestinal distress problems. And it can be very challenging to actually identify which ones are in that. So carnivore diet effectively is a hypoallergenic, just straight elimination diet. You've removed all of those things. Okay? And you're generally speaking consuming things that do not often create problems for most people. So guess what happens? The person feels better. So it reinforces the narrative that it's like, hey, wait a minute, this is the healthiest thing because they equate, I feel a lot better eating this thing than I did before because you've eliminated one or more just things that most people are fine with, you don't feel good about. So the answer is, okay, whenever I'm dealing with someone with carnivore dieting, I always am empathetic. I'm like, this is probably why you're feeling better. But after a little while, I would really love to see you try to reintroduce a few things and let's actually figure out what the problem is because it's not carbs, right? It's not, it's not fiber, but it may be this particular food. You may actually be having it. So let's introduce things back one at a time, one at a time. And they notice all of a sudden that they put some carbs back in, the ones that aren't, like maybe it's sweet potato and they feel fine. Oh man, my energy is feeling better. Okay. And so they gradually feel safe to bring these things back in. So I'd rather meet them with empathy than to just fire and brimstone and say, this is the dumbest thing ever. And then that person is going to like stop listening to me. And then they're going to go listen to the charlatans and the grifters who are selling this crap. So back to the original point. So carnivore in a way is just a more extreme version of keto. It's just taken further down the the spectrum. So and then along comes this manufactured marketing entity, bearded creature that doesn't take showers called the Liver King. And it's like, okay, how could we get more extreme than carnivore? Well, let's narrow it down to just organ meat, okay? And let's never take a shower and let's, sun your butthole and all these other sort of weird things. And people ate it up. I mean, the guy had a massive following, and he was making millions per month and selling supplements and what have you. And people are buying into this shit. Okay. So people like crazy stuff. They just do. We have to accept that
They
that's
do.
human nature, right? I don't think anybody listening is going to be the type who's going to buy into this crap. But don't
You
underestimate.
mean we're not going to convince anybody to suntan their buttholes in the name of health because of this podcast? Can we get one?
And the iron. And the truth is usually in the nuance. It's like I'd say a lot of people, myself included, could probably use a little bit more sunlight, right? I'm very fair, Irish, heritage, Northwestern European heritage. And, I live in northern climes. We don't get a lot of sunlight up here. I don't spend much time out in the sun. I could use more. But if I turn around and flew to Arizona and spent like 3 to 4 weeks, 8 hours a day out in the sun, like right off the hop, guess what? That's a recipe for skin cancer, straight up. You have to titrate your dose to things like this. So when you hear people talk about more sunlight, it's like, they're probably right, but there may also be grifting on the whole thing. Sunlight is not necessarily the
Yeah.
cure all for everything, but guess what? If you're vitamin D deficient, okay, cool. I'll just be mindful of that. Talk to your doctor about it. Maybe you get some more vitamin D in your diet, and maybe you start exposing yourself. Get out in nature, walk a little bit more. Oh, you feel better. You're getting more fresh air. You're getting more exercise, and you're getting a little bit of sun in doses, and you gradually build up. It's like why we get like tans, like the melanin in our skin. We get exposed to it. Okay, cool. They develop it's a type of callousing, right? You lift I'm deadlifting, my hands hurt. After a while, you get calluses and it doesn't hurt anymore. Your skin and your exposure to sunlight is the same fucking thing. You just have to it's load management for lifting. If you go never lifting to 3 days in a row where you do 3 hour long workouts to like near failure the whole time and you start peeing blood, it's because you got rhabdomyolysis. You got to go to the hospital because that shit can kill you. Okay. You've
Yeah.
done so much muscle damage, you've overwhelmed your body's ability to recover from it, or your kidneys to process the metabolic waste product, the creatinine kinase, which is not creatine. So poisons in the dose. A lot of people just go too much too fast. Okay, titrate, ease into stuff, and the load management thing for training stuff. Not only does that, like the rhabdomyolysis is extreme end of stuff, right? That was like super rare. Like you get someone who's like in a car accident or like just some sort of other like massive severe muscle damage trauma to their body. But then CrossFit came along, and I'm going to shit on CrossFit for a second, but too much too fast sometimes. And guess what? All of a sudden, rhabdo is sort of a more common thing. It's like just ease in, but load management, if you go too much weight, too much intensity, too much volume too quickly, you also increase injury risk, right? So that's how you get hurt, or one of the main levers behind getting hurt. So ease things in, gradually increase your dosage of whatever you're dealing with, whether it's sunlight, exercise, you name it.
Well, I like this topic because it kind of has so many parallels in so many different places where it's like the danger lies in the dosage. And that's another good one for when you're online, like when somebody demonizes an ingredient. First question should always be at what dose? Because we know like you would die from like the toxicity from caffeine before you do glyphosate, for example. So it's like you got to know exactly what people are talking about and put it in the right context. And then when you do that, everything becomes more clear and everything becomes a lot more boring on the side of fitness and nutrition.
Yeah, and there are certain red flags. Like if you get people who are dealing in this kind of rhetoric, then especially if you find you're naturally drawn to it, it might be a good idea to unfollow and turn off that stuff because like it's so alluring. It's very, very enticing and addictive. And yeah, it's funny. I haven't used the word glyphosate in any sort of conversation. And I used to go into these
Or
hard.
I mix it up with aspartame. I just realized I meant aspartame. But either
Okay,
way, both of them are
I
trigger
mean,
words for people.
yeah. Oh God. I mean, like anybody who's like hyper wired to glyphosate or like Monsanto, and then they just like they become raving, like screaming
Yep.
demons. It's like, holy shit. Okay. I used to spend
Unleash the
time in these
beast.
like Facebook skeptic groups. And I mean, honestly, you'll learn a lot from it, but even that stuff kind of becomes its own like extreme cult of just negative echo chambers too. So that becomes a little bit too much. If you see people who are just like you said, if you see people who are demonizing anything, take a step back. Just kind of pause and ask yourself, okay, is this really true? Is this objectively true? Or could this be emotionally loaded rhetoric that is sensationalism that is trying to hijack my outrage and my emotions to get me to follow, to get me to click, to get me to be lionized in some sort of movement? And then is that good use of your emotional energy? Does that rob you of focus, productivity, energy, um, just a state of well-being that would be you'd be better off and more at peace if you tune the stuff out. And even I have found there are certain types of rhetoric and people and accounts or whatever that I just like I have to unfollow this stuff. I have to like make sure that my feed does not continue to share this stuff with me because it sometimes and whatever like ideological nutrition training thing whatever it's like is this feeding me things that I agree with to the point where it's like immersing me in a bit of an echo chamber? And what kind of like, to what degree is this hijacking my focus? Okay.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking of like a couple of accounts. I'm like, yeah, they're on the fringe. They're about to be an unfollow. But I think another good thing that comes out of this social media is understanding, like, for example, we really like to downplay the things that we take for granted that are the good things. Because on top of rage bait stuff, getting us to comment, getting us to watch it longer, on the flip side, how many of us actually go out of our way to hit like and
Hmm.
support the pages that we really do genuinely get a lot out of?
Absolutely. And you think about it, if you're following a bunch of accounts you think have really good stuff, maybe turn around and post them up in your story and say, hey, this is an account I like. They're really good at this particular thing. Share it with other, like, for the coaches listening, if you find great authorities, turn around and share them with the other coaches in your world. I try to do that a lot. Um, and having more forms of media, having a podcast, hosting a conference, writing, I can include and highlight people in articles about stuff. I do like to share, as we're talking about here. I've thrown out a bunch of names as you expected, and I kind of hope people will, hopefully tease out some of those names, go follow them, go check out what they're doing, see if their media, helps you and doesn't have you like always feeling like you're in a state of like limbic hijack and outrage.
Absolutely. And one of the best things you guys can do if like you take any action steps from this podcast is go through the people that Andrew follows that I follow and just give a look, like see if they're people that like are experts in something that you genuinely care about and make sure that they like are something that is not rage baity and you should be in a good spot and curate the algorithm to feed you more actually good information.
And I'll give you guys a couple of fun accounts. So a British accent is magic when it comes to for North Americans for fitness stuff. So there's a couple of accounts. Actually, I'm going to give you a handful. So there's a girl named Rachel Hanley. She's wonderful. I had her on my podcast not too long ago, and she's blown up a massive social media following because she posts basic training and nutrition stuff. She's got a very cheeky, self-deprecating, slightly, sexual innuendos a little bit sort of stuff, but she's just fun. She's sweet and good-natured. There's no outrage to her stuff. I got another buddy. His name is Jack Hallows. I really like Jack's stuff. Jack has got a clever, subtle humor to him. They know how to edit their videos in such a way that will just hold your attention, but not in a rage baity sort of way. And there are a couple of good ones. There's another guy, Steve Keen. I think it's Steve Craft Coaching. Rachel Henley's is Henley Fitness, and they're fun. They are actually just fun. Okay, and they'll tackle basic stuff. They can debunk things without fire and brimstone. Like I love Lane Norton. I've like spoken at an event with Lane. Lane can be a bit much for some people. Like it's just a lot of bombast, right? So you got to be like
Yeah.
wired to handle that.
It's
Or I
it's in
mentioned
doses, in
yeah, I
doses.
mentioned Joey Munoz earlier, and Joey used to work as a coach under Lane's umbrella. And now Joey's out on his own and he's blown up a massive social media following.
Yeah.
Joey, very, very thoughtful when it comes to presenting counter arguments to some of the more sensational stuff that we're seeing on social media. Joey was nuanced enough that Jillian Michaels, and I think it's a Dean Somerset quote. It's like she's an entertainer, she's an actor playing a fitness professional, and Jillian gets criticized a lot, and she perpetuates a lot of stuff that I don't think is very fact based. But it's so Joey basically took something that she said. I can't remember what it was. It might have been like something about if you blend up a banana, it like somehow negatively impacts its like blood. I don't know. I think it was something along those lines. I may
Yeah.
be wrong. But anyway, so he gave a thoughtful and evidence-based response to it. It wasn't fire and brimstone. And she turned around and she seemed to appreciate it. And so they ended up, she like realized, oh wow, like I didn't know. Okay, cool. So she changed her tune and then she turned around and she did something to collaborate with them. And it's one thing to tear down the people who are sharing things that we disagree with, or I think we can comfortably say is misinformation. But it's a whole nother thing to bridge the gap and to earn their respect and to actually like at least in some way, shape, or form change their messaging and have a gateway into now helping them have better information, and maybe they turn around and platform that better information and it helps platform someone like Joey to a wider audience. That's brilliant. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So I endorse Joey a lot because I find he does this with nuance as opposed to scathing viciousness.
Yeah. And honestly, Jillian Michaels is one of those names where I'm like, she's honestly surprised me a little bit the past few years because like she has put out a lot of bad information, but to her credit, she relies on a team. And I don't think that that team is very good. And when she comes across better info, she gets people like Joey on. She brought Lane Norton on. And I'm like, okay, this woman is trying.
She's shown a willingness to change her messaging and to platform smart and evidence-based people. I can respect that. Absolutely. Right.
Yep. It's
Long way to
just, you
go.
can tell she has a tough time letting go of the beliefs from before, though. So it's like a little bit of a balance.
There is that.
Yep, yep. But oh my God, there was a lot of really good information on here, and I had so many notes ready to go, but I definitely don't want to take up too much of your time. So I'll put a cap on it here, let it marinate, let the people sit on what we talked about. But while they do that, if they heard you and they're like, wow, Andrew's awesome, I want to see more of him, where can they find you?
Instagram's easy. It's the hub for everything at Andrew Coates Fitness. If you're really interested in my podcast, so I am in the process of revamping the podcast. So I'm going to take a little bit longer, but I'll start recording new episodes soon. And my goal is to pivot away from conversations that are primarily for coaches into something that is more for everybody. And that is the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. So you can still go search that and subscribe to it. And I'll be back really soon with some new stuff. You can go check out. There's a lot of really good stuff before. If you're a coach, it's a gold mine. And then if you're really interested in some of the articles I've written, I have a lot of stuff on my website, andrewcoatesfitness.com. But start with my Instagram. And if you ever, as you said, if anybody has any questions, you can message me. I will respond to anything. And I like leaving with this. If someone has found your podcast through my media, scroll through. Brian, I know you've had a lot of industry leaders. You've had a lot of great people. I know you had my good friend Ann Chisholm on recently. Ann's wonderful,
Yep.
really smart, very successful. So you guys can go check out what you guys talked about, and then just dive into your episode library, and I'm sure they're going to find great resources. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, and thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. And
Right.
everybody listening from my media, if we can do Andrew one solid, let's go and share this with somebody who really needs to hear it. So if you know somebody who is in that social media shitstorm that they're just like enraged all the time, just send it their way and just be like, Brian and Andrew say hi. Just give this a listen. All right. But
Absolutely.
until next time, I can't even talk right now. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for listening all the way through. I'll see you next time. But until then, go kick some ass. See you later.